In Henrik Ibsen's 1882 play An Enemy of the People, a small town builds a bath complex that will be a boon to its economy. However, medical officer Dr. Stockman soon discovers that the bath water is badly contaminated.
American families, after all, have enough to worry about without having to worry about whether that glass of water Diane talked about that you might offer to a child or a grandchild will be contaminated.
The 1974 Safe Drinking Water Act, or the SDWA, was the first piece of comprehensive federal legislation that regulated public water systems.
Under the Safe Drinking Water Act, Congress directed EPA to set national standards, but assigned primary responsibility to the states to implement and enforce the law.
If we have a contaminant that EPA has set a drinking water standard for, called a maximum contaminant level, then there's a whole host of responses that would happen.
Prior to its passage, only 60% of surveyed water systems met current SDWA standards, and 90% had microbe levels that exceeded what is considered safe today. But thanks to the SDWA and subsequent amendments, the US now has one of the safest water supplies in the world. However, like all federal legislation, the SDWA did not solve everything.
Flint is a classic example. When Flint switched from receiving water from Detroit to using the Flint River, that was approved by the state.
Our local officials didn't have a say. And even when the lab supervisor at the water treatment plant said the water's not ready, the plant's not ready, we can't send water safely out, the state still said flip that switch.
Lead was kind of the main show, but you also had Legionella as a pathogen that killed many. You had disinfection byproducts. You had high levels of E. coli.
We started having rashes right away, hair falling out. People were complaining about the different smells.
But why do such tragic failures occur?
Some of our contaminants are not yet regulated, and that's a big gap in the law.
Despite having an unregulated contaminant monitoring rule in place, contaminants are sometimes left unregulated by the EPA decades after being marked as a health hazard. Among these are a group of chemicals called per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS.
Those who have higher levels of PFAS in their blood tend to have an increase in serum cholesterol, elevated liver enzymes. There's a number of diseases, probably the most important, those being kidney cancer.
There was a fellow who lived in the village. His father had died from kidney cancer, and he was wondering if there was something in the water. And he went to the village water district and said, "Can you test for that?" And they said no, because we're not required to test for that.
Even for contaminants that are regulated, the maximum contaminant levels, or MCL, set by the EPA are not actually the safest.
None of the regulations in the Safe Drinking Water Act are health-based. They're based on money.
So the EPA will look at all the standards, but then also develop basically a margin of safety.
You want to have it sufficiently low, but you don't set it at zero. That's just not realistic, and it would not be affordable.
But before you make any changes, you start out by ensuring that the current law is followed, which was not happening at Flint, which was not happening other places.
So are there underlying causes even greater than holes and shortcomings in legislation?
It's money, it's lack of political will, it's intense lobbying.
Dr. Stockman initially receives gratitude for his discovery, but by the next day, the mayor tells him that if he reveals the truth about the contaminated bath water to the public, the town will face economic ruin.
Everybody was like, no, we don't want to be labeled with having a lead problem because that means we have to fix it.
They would have had to tell the entire population, face the wrath of the angry public, find money to modify treatments to replace lead pipes. I guess they just didn't care that much.
They're in charge of our recovery, which is why we don't have one and why we're still fighting.
Ignoring the mayor's demands, Dr. Stockman gives a passionate speech to the townspeople, but inadvertently offends them and turns them against him. Branded an enemy of the people, he is shunned, evicted, and loses his job.
While it is crucial that we do everything in our ability to prevent stories like this one, we should also recognize the progress being made today.
states are allowed to develop standards that are more stringent.
So Michigan has shown the way. After Flint, they actually went ahead and made a much stronger lead and copper rule for their own state.
Because Congress can be slow to act, laws that are enacted at the state level kind of bubble up, and then people in Congress, members of Congress, pay attention.
So now the EPA is going to look at the Michigan model, and they're going to try to include some of those very good ideas into the national model.
It is moving faster because we do have Flint as an example, but we need to be an example of a disaster that was man-made, but a recovery that was done right.
We hope this legislative progress reflects a greater change in the political will for adequate inspection, regulation, and reparation. Because though the fate of the town in this play may appear decided, the story of providing safe, clean drinking water to all in this nation has only just begun.